Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. We are still waiting on one of our panelists, but I'll go ahead and start with our introductions and thank everybody for being here. So I'm Tiffany Wood. I am a research co-chair for the AOCPMR Research Committee. And just to share what we do is we put together monthly journal clubs and then also just try to promote students who are doing research and also different research efforts that are going on specifically for PM&R, but we hope with this lecture, to their Q&A session, to be able to just offer useful information as well as our experiences with regards to research in general, in addition to PM&R. And the AOC PM&R is an osteopathic specific organization. We have the Student Council, which is for those of us who are in medical school. And then we have a resident and attending council as well. And so we try to work in tandem and to support PM&R in general, but specifically in osteopathic medicine. So I am joined with other members from the research committee. And so we have Maggie and we have Clay, and I will let them introduce themselves and share their experience with you guys before we dive into our Q&A.
I guess I can go first. My name is Maggie. I'm from New Jersey, went to Emory for undergrad, and am now at Rowan Somm over in New Jersey for medical school. In terms of research, I've been involved for a while now, even before medical school. I was at the Nathan Kline Institute for Psychiatric Research while in high school, and in college I was doing cognition research for 4 years. In medical school, I was part of a program down at Emory, did research during my summer there, so I actually cold called for that one. And was doing abusive head trauma down at the neurotrauma lab. I'm also part of Carolina's Research Mentors program currently, and I'm submitted 2 case reports over to AAP that got accepted this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Hey, everyone. My name is Clay. I'm a 4th-year medical student as well. I go to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, originally from Pittsburgh. In terms of research, I guess it's been a while. I guess I started when I was in undergrad. I went to Gettysburg, did a little stuff at UPMC, then University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. But then I went to PCOM, did a master's program, had a research concentration, did a lot of bench basic science stuff there. Ended up doing like 4 years worth of stuff. Got some solid publications studying epithelial cells. Really enjoyed that aspect of research. I think it's very important. And we can touch on this later. But then, as we've kind of transitioned into more clinical years, been able to get a whole slew of other things. Similar to Maggie, my friend who's on the social media chair, she goes to PCOM as well. We just submitted a nice online virtual, retrospective study, kind of studying some interview websites, how COVID's changed things over the past few years. So that's pretty exciting as well. Excited to talk to you all about this. It's like a passion of all of ours, so it's exciting.
And I'll just, let's see, sorry, I'm admitting people too. So I'm Tiffany Wood, like I mentioned, I'm an OMS 3 at ACOM, at Alabama College of Osteopathic Medicine. My research experience, I was involved in a lab in biological sciences when I was an undergrad, and really was just a bench monkey at that point in time. But since then, I went and got a master's degree at the University of South Florida, and following that was the head of research for the inpatient rehab facility in Northport, Alabama. It's near the University of Alabama, so we were affiliated with the university. There I worked on just different things for the unit, geriatric screenings and depression screenings, and we used a lot of our data in order to enhance patient care and make them standardized practices, which was really cool. And then I also worked with the Capstone College of Nursing, and we developed some we considered different research studies to look for alternative methods of TBI management, and a lot of research looking at like THC in assisting with that. And since then, in medical school, have done a few different poster presentations, and then was able to submit a case report through Curious, which I highly recommend to anyone who's looking to publish on their own and to fast track some kind of publishing. But yeah, thank you everybody for being here. With all that being said, I have our questions that were submitted ahead of time as we're talking. If any questions come up, I have the chat open, so feel free to submit them. If they fit in the conversation, I'll work them in. If not, we have some moments reserved at the end in order to address any questions that have come up during today's session. And so we are so excited to be able to talk with you guys today. So our first question is, how do you get involved in research?
So I guess I can start. So throughout my research in med school, I've done both cold emailing, like I said, for Emory, done formal programs, and just done case studies. So those are all ways you can get involved. I think usually between the summers, if you have a summer between first and second year, which I did, it's a really good time to do like a more solid research project. If you're interested in doing something like retrospective, something that takes a little bit more work, I think that's a really good time to work on something. So I just found people that I just looked on institution websites of areas I was interested in, and just cold emailed people my CV and that I was interested in their research. And that's how I got like kind of my research opportunities for the summer. The Carolinas does a research program every year as well. That's an online opportunity. They usually post about on their Twitter, and Twitter in general is a very good place to find research. And you have to apply for it. There's an application. I don't think there's like no letters of rec or anything. It's just like fill out the form, maybe submit your CV, and that's completely online. It's just like once a month that you meet online, like a Zoom meeting, and you get assigned like a resident and attending, and you work with them on a case study that they pick out. They teach you how to write a case study, how to pick a case study, and they kind of have you on a timeline to submit for AAP. And everyone in that program did get accepted, so they do a pretty good job of like giving you feedback and setting you up. And then the last thing is just case studies while being on rotation. I think that sorry, I'm talking for a while. I think that while you're on rotation, you should always be on the lookout for case studies. You can always ask your attending or residents if you think something's interesting, if that could be a potential case study that you could submit to either a conference or write up for a paper. It sometimes is a little bit harder to get like a paper written up, depending on what kind of journals you want to submit to. It was Carolina's rehab research program. Sorry, I saw that pop up. It's so Carolina's is in Charlotte. It's one of the PM&R programs, and it is with the PM&R residents and attending. No problem. But then you can submit to case studies if you find anything interesting. It's pretty easy to do. It's a relatively smaller project to do.
Yeah, I think that's honestly, great stuff. I don't do cold emailing as much. I just haven't had as much success with that. I've certainly tried it. One thing I want to definitely talk about with, like Maggie mentioned, is Twitter. As strange as it sounds, I think that's a real good gold mine, specifically within the PM&R field. I really don't think other fields have such a strong network, but I've gotten a case study at a great institution at UPMC strictly through just talking to someone through Twitter. He's a resident, really friendly guy. And we were talking, he just reached out and said, I have this very interesting case. And little do I know, it got accepted to AOCPMR, wrote it up, and it was fantastic. So I think that's a very important resource to have. And then in terms of my other experiences, I think opportunity is just like, you always have to be open and willing to say yes. I think that's it's a mentality when you're on these clinical rotations. That's where the bulk of a lot of these opportunities are going to come. Staying every once in a while, if you say you have like a didactic or someone's giving a lecture or some faculty, if you stay after and you're genuinely interested and you're just chatting away with the attending after, if you drop like a simple line like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're talking about. Is there, if you ever have anything interesting you want to write up, or, if you're working on anything, I'd love to help. Something as simple as that can go so far. And to be honest with you, I'd say like I've easily gotten 4 opportunities just from that. And, you can always kind of walk yourself back later on, but simply extending that you're interested and you're willing to help really goes a long way. And immediately, they'll enjoy that and they'll know you're serious about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you guys said as far as reaching out to people and showing your interest. I am not as good or confident in like reaching out to folks I don't know. And so one thing that I have done is join like the different PM&R professional organizations. Like we have AOCPMR, there's also like the AAP, and then there's AAPMR. And like, having mentors through that, or just making connections through those, and then being able to reach out to folks who like kind of know you, or, maybe have at least seen your name before, and saying like, hey, I'm really interested in this, or, trying to build up a rapport with people on Twitter, and then reaching out to them following that are ways that like I've been successful in finding research. Or even you can go outside of PM&R specifically and still find things that would be really worthwhile. Like if you happen to know somebody who is in physical therapy, or if you happen to know somebody, so like my boyfriend's mother does vision therapy, and so that was still a form of therapy, and we were able to write a case report based on that I will still be able to talk about and promote, because the efforts and the goals with like that realm of treatment was very similar to PM&R. And so if you pick something like lifestyle medicine, or even I have some friends who have done research in like disparities, and then you can address that in getting better, promoting wellness in the same way that PM&R is focused on getting better and promoting wellness. And so it's this is a great field because it's easy to translate things from any aspect of medicine. And so don't feel like you have to box yourself in, because it's very hard to find physiatrists associated with your school if your school is anything like mine. And so, being open-minded and thinking about like, well, who do I know? Who do I have a good relationship with? Who can I convince that like I'm a hard worker, they have something going on, I want to help them with it. And then whatever you end up with, make that work for you. That'd probably be my recommendation. We have TJ joining us on the call. If you have anything, TJ, feel free to hop in, but we're just glad you're here.
Hey, yeah, good seeing you guys. Sorry for being a few minutes late. I think Clayton kind of nailed a lot of the main points that I was going to say. I actually did get a lot of my research through cold emailing, however. But it's one of those things where I think if you really emphasize that you are free labor, and you're going to help someone for free, and it's going to literally cost them nothing, like a lot of people will go for that. And it's tough because some people, they already are managing other students, and that's why they might say no, or they just might not have the capacity for anyone else. But it doesn't hurt to keep trying. And if you're like truly interested in someone's work, to check back in again later at another time, because maybe something could work out. So I always try to like remember, keep the doors open too.
I wanted to add 2 things. TJ, watch the road. Don't stop talking. Drive, and then we'll talk. 2, I think it's important to realize the situation that you're in, depending on like the hospital setting or school setting, whatever. But, I was at a smaller hospital, a very rural, smaller hospital where there weren't residents yet. So, in that situation, you have direct access to attendings. And what do attendings have? Interesting cases. They have, years of experience. But I think that would also, and then I reached out to those attendings for interest. But I think that would change a lot if you, at bigger, huge institutions where, residents are mainly the ones that are kind of synthesizing all these patients and seeing all the unique stuff. So maybe they're the ones you want to reach out to once you've kind of built a nice relationship with some of them. So those are just little things you want to take into consideration.
I also want to add something after what Tiffany said. So I think she made a really good point about it doesn't need to be in PM&R. My research at Emory was not well, it wasn't in PM&R. I was working with a pediatric neurosurgeon, but we submitted to AAPM&R for it. And like everyone on my PM&R interviews has basically viewed it as something that's important to PM&R, well, because you can frame it differently. And I did get to shadow PM&R physicians while I was down there. So not boxing yourself in is a good idea, especially if you are like if you're a third year, you're on clinicals already, and you maybe don't have access to a PM&R rotation. Even if you don't want to, even if the formal research projects that attendings are doing aren't necessarily something you're interested in, you can still look out for cases you think are relevant to rehab. There's a lot of cases that are going to be, you can see that may end up being a rehab, being a rehab case later. And those are things that are still interesting to people for like AAP and AAPM&R. And you can just present like, I want to write this up as a case study. And a lot of times attendings will tell you if it's okay, it's okay to like write, because it's not a lot of work for them. They get to put their name on another paper, especially if you're just submitting it to like a conference and don't need like funds to submit it to like a formal journal, then they're very willing. On the other hand, if you are submitting something to a journal, I know Curious, which does not require fees and is it's indexed on PubMed. It's like a little bit of a different setup, but I can write that in chat if you need it. But that's a good place. It doesn't have a good place to submit to. Then that typically takes case reports. Just a side note.
I want to just, sorry, I keep going, but I just want to mention, this is for you guys. This is for all of you to ask questions for your own interpretation and help. I mean, I'm not sure where everyone stands in terms of years of school. I don't know who's first year, second, third, or fourth. If you guys do have specific questions, please reach out and like, let us help clarify things, or how you could specifically, help yourself at the level of schooling that you're at. So definitely, be vocal here if you need to be.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. The next question that we had submitted was how can you get involved in research during rotations, but also if you all could just speak to what time management looked like as far as research involvement, both preclinically and clinically, and just discussing what that looked like for you.
So I guess I'll go first. In terms of time management, it's a little tricky. It's one of those things. It's like when it rains, it pours, and there can be a lot of work at once, and then there can be no work for a while, and then it'll come and go. The presentation that I gave the other month, that one is something I kind of had to sacrifice a few weekends for, but it was one of those things. It's like, hey, I'm excited to be doing this, so it's kind of worth it. But yeah, I would definitely say some projects might be more linear. I have some friends that are working in my lab, and they go in like 2 days a week on top of everything else they're doing with their didactics. So it's one of those things you can space it out. But when it comes to writing, sometimes like what we do is we do like a round robin on our papers. So you'll have the paper, and then you basically have to make your edits, and then the heat is on because you want to kind of do your work and then get it off to the next person, so it's not just sitting around for too long.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Maggie, if you want. I liked what TJ said. I like the round robin aspect of things. I think that's a fair way to divvy up work as well. One thing it's a trap. You always get opportunities. So, you find a cool research and you're like, yeah, I absolutely want to write this up. It's so easy to say yes, especially it doesn't take very long, but then inevitably 2, 3, 4 weeks down the road, when you're starting to write it or edit it, or there's a due date coming up, that's when the time crunch kind of sets in. So it's just, I think you can always handle work. I mean, I think we're all accustomed to doing a lot of work, but I think it's important to just, when you're making a due date, have in mind some of like, your third and fourth year like things that you have to do, like comats. Those are big ones. You know, you don't want to have to be a due date 2 days before a comat, or not, yeah, comat shelves and stuff, and then, you know, feel just so stressed out, do poorly in your comat. So just, you got to really, really organize yourself. And, you know, I think TJ said, do it consistently over the span of a few weeks to kind of alleviate that stress towards the end. But it's doable. I'm sure everyone here can participate.
Yeah, I agree with everything TJ and Clay were saying. I also think it's possible, depending on how your med school schedule is set up, you can try to do bulks of research when things are lightest. It really depends on your med school schedule. Looking at what people at your school specifically do can be really helpful, because what worked for me and might not work for someone, you know, like it really does depend. But like they said, things tend to spill over, so it's something to be aware of, even when you do it and like set it up for, like I did, like a bulk of my like bigger research was done during the summer. Things do spill over into the year, so it's things that's something to be aware of. While on rotation, you can, obviously case studies are a little bit easier to write up. Those are things that you could be doing then. I also wanted to bring up the possibility of doing a research elective depending on what your school allows. That can be something that's really helpful. You can even apply, if you're like going into your 4th year, you can even apply to do them at other institutions. And it's a really good way to, and if you don't have PM&R in your school and you really want to do a bigger project that is like PM&R, that's a really good way to get involved as well. And a lot of people I know who have done research electives during their 4th year, it's something that's seen very positively on while they've been on the interview trail so far.
Yeah, I think Meg, it's a huge point. I'm doing one January, like just and I'm not sure how everyone's schools does it, but you just write up a little paper. It's not very long at all. You submit it, and they'll look at it. But most people get accepted. But I think that's something that not every student is aware of. And I know you can't. Some people in their 3rd year get not vacation, but like, you know, an open elective month. So those are things to take advantage of. I think we actually get PCOM, we get 8 weeks of research. And, you know, that's a lot of time. That's a significant time to put in work. You can easily you can do a lot of stuff in 8 weeks. And, you know, they don't broadcast it. I don't think they necessarily want everyone doing that, but take advantage of it if you do have an interest.
I also want to add, like working with other people on something that you want to publish is just very helpful, because like, you know, y'all have mentioned, when you are able to work round robin and divvy up the work, but then also when you like know that other people are taking the time to work on something, you're like more motivated, you know, to take the time and like meet the deadlines that your group is setting up. And also a benefit to that is, you know, the more that you include people in things that you're working on, if someone else came across something cool, they might ask you like, hey, tag along, help me out with this as well. I know that's happened for me some. And once you publish something, it's on your application, but no one will ever look and go like, oh, Tiffany was on, you know, multiple papers, like had several presentations that had 3 and 4 authors on it. Like no one cares about that part. And so why not like share it? It makes less work for you. And then it also opens more opportunities for you in the future. So that's a huge recommendation that I would have too. Does anyone have any questions so far? I can move on to our next one as well. We had a good number submitted. Okay.
Can I just interject? Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Tiffany. So it goes in relation to what you were saying about like the round robin group. So I did research in undergrad, and I remember I approached my PI with this idea where like one of my friends just wanted to get involved and kind of learn about the paper writing process. And I asked him, I was like, you know, is it okay if I have this person kind of write this section? And the PI shot it down because of IRB approval and whatnot. So is that something that gets circumvented depending on the institution, or is it something where my PI was maybe just being a little bit more stringent and careful and cautious? Or are you guys able to speak to that?
When I was talking about round robin, I meant like for the investigators and the people who are in on the project. But I guess, you know, maybe if your friend was on the IRB, it depends if there was like sensitive information. I'm really not too sure about the details on that one, but
Yeah,
sorry
yeah.
to hear your friend couldn't get involved.
Yeah, like, that's kind of a little, I mean, I feel like that's a little strict. And maybe there's something that, you know, is misunderstood, but I've had yet to have any problems like that, you know, in terms of sharing. Um, just as long as they're on the original IRB, there shouldn't be a problem with anything like that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
I agree with that. And like when it's kind of, at least in my experience, has been different doing it in medical school versus an undergrad, because like the ownership and the onus is so much more on the students doing it, and the PI is more so just like the terminal degree that needs to be present in order for it to be reviewed and published. And anytime that we've published something, you know, it's not like we get halfway through and then pull someone else in or something like that. It's like, hey, this is what I have. I think I'm going to submit an IRB for it. Like, you want to help me? Oh, okay. What do you think about so and so? Like, they would probably be helpful too. And then we will submit it together.
I've honestly found like people in medicine, well, like being past undergrad, I think undergrad in general is like a lot. I know people who had problems and it was like a lot stricter in terms of like putting people on and adding extra people. It's just something about like that PhD academic mentality. I'm not sure. But in general, like IRB processes differ per institution. I know it's very individualized, but I haven't had a problem in med school for anything. I know that's not the most helpful thing in the world.
No, those are all helpful. Thank you.
And actually, as I think about it, one of the major limiting factors that I've run into is like some journals limit the number of authors you can have, but that's the only time that I've like seen a limitation. Like I know Curious, which Maggie has mentioned too, is awesome for students to try and publish through. But I think their limit is like 4 authors, and one of them has to be someone with a terminal degree. Awesome. Thanks for your question. Another one that we had submitted is, are case studies sufficient for a PM&R application? And then along with this question, Maggie and Clay, would you guys mind speaking about what talking about your research has looked like in interviews and on your residency applications?
Yeah, absolutely. One, case studies, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Case studies are super fun. They're a great way, specifically within PM&R. I mean, there are so many interesting cases. It's a great way just to bridge the gap between more clinical, like in-depth research. I have a few that I genuinely appreciate, and to kind of go to that second question, are definitely brought up. In terms of audition or interviews, they're often just kind of like brought up, and they have your whole little ERAS sheet in front of them. And they're like, oh, I see that you wrote this case study, like that looks really cool. And they're genuinely interested. It's not like they're grilling you. It's not like they're like asking you like, is it significant or anything? No, they just genuinely want to see your level of interest, and kind of hear you explain, what was cool about it. Why is this something that is worth writing up? But it's a great thing to talk about, especially if you're confident in it and you have a good understanding. Yeah.
I agree. I think case studies are great. So the thing is that also I just want to say, obviously, all the people here on this panel are research people, but you do not need research to apply to PM&R. That is not something that's like you absolutely have to do research and no one's going to look at you. Research is one way out of many to stand out on like to have your application stand out. Even at like top programs, you'll see there's residents that haven't done research before. I have no idea what the rest of their CV looked like when they were applying to residency, but it is not a be all end all. If you don't have research, you're not going to go. You're not going to go to a good program. I mean, all the programs are good programs. You're not going to go to like maybe an academic program that's known to have research. There are people there that even at those kind of programs that like don't have like very minimal research experience. So I just wanted to put that out there first. In terms of like case studies are definitely great. people ask about research all the time. I'm someone that like very much emphasize research on my CV, so that might have increased the amount that research has been asked from me. And that wants to do like partially like I want to do like research partially like in my long-term career, so that probably swings the scale a little bit more towards me talking about my research a lot. Like Clay said, it's not like they really grill you on it. Even when they kind of do ask, there's some eventually, like once in a while, someone will ask like more specific questions about my research, but I genuinely feel like when they're doing that, it's usually out of interest. And they're like, "Oh, what's the next? Like, oh, what's your next steps on that? What do you think that's going to happen with that? Like, what do you think that means?" But like not in a way that's trying to be like hard on you, on the way that they're like, "Oh, this is so cool, like how what's coming next, I want to hear more about it." So it's not something like they're going to be like mad at you if you like, "Oh, like it's still in the works." So like the study I was working on, I was like, people were like, "Oh, so when are we going to use that biomarker?" And I was like, well, it's like it's still a small study, it's a pilot study, so like more research needs to be done before we do anything. But like things like that. So like it's not something you can't like circumnavigate when they ask me about like more specific things. But yeah, it's not like you can have research, but any type of research is good. Just one way to stand out.
I think it's a yeah, I think it's a great idea. I remember thinking like when I first started interviews that they were like gonna like read my research paper, then like grill me on it during the interview, and that's just absolutely not the case. Like they didn't read your paper or anything, and it'd be nice if they did, but so don't expect them to like know exactly what's happening. So just a tip there.
Also, so I will say I'm a third year, so I have not applied for residency. I just have asked a lot of questions to the people who are a year ahead of me, and have like read a lot of the data. But I want to emphasize what Maggie said about how research is not the end all be all. I just shared in here the NRMP match data. And so it shows you the outcomes of the match. And I also have a screen grab for you guys if you want to open it. But basically, most students who matched had between like the biggest majority are students who had none to 3 research projects. And those could be, anything from something that's published, something, then also something that was like very small, something that was a case report. They don't even differentiate that out. So just to echo, what they've said, that they're not, looking to grill you on your research, and then also having research versus not having research is not the end of the world. And also there are ways to take things that you're already doing in school and to make those into like presentations and publication, or at least poster presentations, if you can find those online like poster day submissions, which are easy to find as if you're like members of the different professional organizations. They'll put at least 2 on a year where you can submit to, and then you at least can add that to your CV, which is always a great opportunity.
I thought I'm just going to add one. Oh, and Maggie can probably back me up. I put a bunch of like, not even like oral presentations that you do during your third year. Some places require you to do one, the end of your clinical rotation, why don't you give us a 15-30 minute presentation on a topic, but, make sure you're keeping track of those as you go through your third and fourth year. Throw those on your ERAS application, and I've gotten asked about those, and those are easy. Like you have to do it anyway. Maybe if you're dead set on PM&R, make sure it's related to something PM&R or something like you can like put a twist on that is physiatry related, and that's a presentation. That's an awesome presentation. That's an awesome experience to have, and that's something you can easily talk about.
Yeah, there's lots of different opportunities to find, like, because on ERAS, it like they have like oral presentations, poster presentations, like actual formal publications, like non-journal. If you have like a publication that you have that's like not like a research journal publication, but you wrote like an article, there's also places to list that. And even things that aren't published are in the production. There is normally on the CV you would list things that you just submitted, but on ERAS, because they know students are in the process of submitting and they want to give you the opportunity, there is an actual section for that, just so you're aware. And on the flip side of like, you don't need research, but certainly if you do have research, it is something that is if you're passionate about it and talk about it, like I do think it's something that has benefited me for strengthening my CV, but that's because I was interested in research and that's what I'm passionate about. Like you can do that through leadership, you can do that through lots of advocacy things. Some people do like lots of things with disability clinics, things like that too. So whatever you feel you're passionate about. I think in general, for anytime you're creating that application, being able to speak passionately about whatever you choose to be involved in is what makes the big difference. Being able to like have that connection, being able to like whatever it is, as opposed to just kind of doing things for your CV. So as much as possible, like find what interests you in PM&R and follow that.
Awesome. That's really excellent advice. For our next question, we have, how would you list a research project on your application that has yet to be published? Which Maggie, I think you talked to a bit. So if you wouldn't mind going back to that. And then also in answering this question, we could just talk about how everyone has their research laid out like in their CV as well for people who may not be putting together applications soon.
Sure. So for ERAS, your CV goes all into the ERAS application. My school had us submit our CVs beforehand and then kind of in the same format, put it in. So for the publications, it's pretty clear about what goes where. I think it says non-published. I don't know if Clay happens, I can see if Clay happens to know off the top of his head.
I'm looking, I'm trying to find my
I thought you were
printout
checking,
right
but I didn't
now.
want to call you out in case you were.
No, I think it's on my other computer, but I'm looking right now.
So like it has
But
different,
yeah.
Sorry, it has different sections, and it's like it's like basically a fillable form. Like you just put your like it gives you different sections like author name, like journal, blah blah blah, and it puts in, you just put the information in. It's not very hard to figure out per se.
No, there's honestly so many different options. That's like the burden. There's so many like little variables you can add, like oral presentation, like video presentation, little things like that. So, and they all have an entire list of in the process. You know, I think there's even a submitted or like there's there's so many options. So that's nothing to be concerned about. I think it shows that you know, if you have prior research experience and then you have one that's being submitted, it shows that you're continuing to work on things. You didn't just do one and quit it. You know, you're like continuing to work on it. You're continuing to evolve your research mind. So I think it looks good, to be honest with you. It shows that you're, you know, not giving up.
They really like put in all the possibilities because they know how neurotic med students are. So they almost give you too many possibilities. So it's just kind of like, I don't know if that actually worked with the neuroticism, but it does give you all the possibilities of things you can submit there. And there definitely, like Clay said, there definitely is a section. I know there was like, I think it's on the non-published, I can't remember off the top of my head, like non-published stuff. And then there's a section for either like submitted or if it's already accepted, so you can differentiate like this has not been published yet but it's accepted, it's definitely going in, kind of thing, which obviously is a slight difference but does make a difference. And then in terms of like putting it on your CV, you basically put the like the citation, like what would be listed if someone else was citing you, like the reference, and then usually I bold my name so it's easy to find where I am, because you want to keep the order the same of the actual order of like who was first author, second author, third author, and then you just make yourself easy to find by putting yourself in bold.
That's great advice. I need to go edit my CV tonight.
Yeah, and keep all of my items on my CV as they would be if you were to cite them. But that's really good advice to put my name in bold because I don't have that done.
Yeah, and I think just to drive it home, like even if you don't publish anything per se, or you know, you put in work towards something, it's the work that you put in is valuable because you were there, you gained some kind of experience, and you were part of something. So whatever capacity you were involved, even if it's like not even being submitted, if you're just working on the paper, make sure that that's being elaborated or shown in some way that you are working on something, you're interested in what you're doing. I think at the end of the day, people want somebody who is passionate about what they're doing and does things because they want to, not just because they feel like they have to. And I think that's the big difference there.
That's a great point, TJ. There is obviously under experiences, you can just list things as research experiences. You don't have to have a publication or even something submitted yet to list it as an experience and talk about what you are doing actively.
Oh, and that's one thing I want to talk about. You just quickly mentioned just tips to think of when you're doing this. Like when you're writing your experiences, this is your opportunity to that's your little quick blurb to kind of sell what you're doing and why does that make you someone that's a qualified applicant. Why is this research experience interesting? What did you even do in it? Like why is this something that you would want just a program director to see? So those little things are very beneficial, and they give you like 300 characters or something along those lines, and utilize them. It's a nice little spot to kind of give yourself a quick glow up.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That is the end of the pre-submitted questions that we had. And so if anyone has questions, please feel free to jump in with those. I pulled up some websites that have like the AAP, just some websites that have like those summer research opportunities. So I'll drop those links here, but anyone who has questions, now is a great time to jump in with those.
I guess I'm the only one. So we kind of touched on it with TJ, and then Maggie and Clay, you guys touched on it as well, but like TJ, I'm a second year. So when you were going through and you were kind of getting involved with board studying and kind of ramping that up, and I mean, that's a little bit of ways, but just trying to plan ahead, how were you able to fit extracurricular activities, not just research, but kind of all these other things as well, into your life? And Clay, you touched on it, like we do a lot of work every day. We're used to fitting things in, but just to kind of keep yourself sane, how are you able to do that? Because like you mentioned, things arise at the drop of the hat. You're not always ready.
I guess when time comes around for boards, I'm just going to ask people to be nice to me and just try to not do too much research stuff at that time. I might have a project starting in January, so we'll see what goes on with that. But I think, like, as long as you're transparent with people and you're like, hey, I'm really busy right now, they'll work with you. The people you're talking to, they're all in this. They know how hard that you guys work and we all work, and things aren't always like super easy, and you do need time for yourself too. So I think it's always important to take time for yourself first. But definitely if you can get like a little bit done, try to do that too, but don't sacrifice your mental health or well-being or anything like that. Did I answer the question? I'm not sure.
I think a lot of people realize how important boards are. At least at my school, our leadership transitions are set up so that you can get rid of your leadership responsibility right before we were ramping up for step one. I know the timing is a little bit different now, with things going past Phil in terms of like step one, complex one, that when things are like most important, what scores matter the most. But generally, like people, if they're in medicine, maybe a little bit different if they're PhD, but if they're in medicine, they kind of understand that boards are very important. And I've found that most people that I've worked with understand that school comes first. And there is, and I want to emphasize that school does come first. And the fact that if you're worried about like failing your boards, that is going to hurt you way more than like not having research during that time. So be careful about like what you're committing yourself to. However, if you do feel like you can handle it, it is possible to schedule in some stuff while studying for boards. You just build it into your schedule, because I know a lot of people have like kind of a solidified board schedule and it's like pretty strict. So you just put that in there, like how the same thing as people putting in their like workouts, whatever they like to do in their time. It's something you just have to plan around specifically. And if you, there shouldn't be like big things that come up ideally, especially unless you're in the process. Obviously, if you're in the process of having something peer reviewed, you never know what's going to come back. But just be aware of like if you're planning on submitting a conference, plan ahead of that. Like what conference do you want to submit to? Like when's the deadlines for those things? And kind of knowing those things coming up. But besides that, unless there's like a hard deadline, a lot of people are really understanding of that time.
Back in our old days when there was a score, I honestly just didn't, I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't want to do any research around, honestly, from like January on. I was just, I'm going to study. Everything was put on hold. Like the woman who I was doing research under was so understanding. She was totally on board. And that's kind of what you want. You want to have a good relationship. They want to be able to understand what you're going through. But I just felt it was more important for me to do well and, get a good score than it was to get that little bit of something else. And you can always do stuff after. But with, honestly, with it being pass fail now, I don't know everyone's comfort levels. I honestly don't know even that much about it. It may be something that may be a little more reasonable and, could set you apart if you do continue to pursue it. It wouldn't hurt, but I think it's something you have to decide. And I'd personally play it safe rather than, try to be Superman.
I personally did throw out most of my my extracurriculars, my research responsibilities during that time because I was really stressed. I actually did, now that I remember, I actually did have something coming up during step 1 studying. I think my undergrad research, which had been like going through the process of being resubmitted, was looking for data that was for like specifics on the data from like when I collected back in undergrad during dedicated, which was terrible. And my laptop with that data was down at, because it was COVID, so I'd moved around, was down at my apartment. Now I was at my parents' house. I literally had someone else go pick it up and be like, can you just like send me these files? But so things happen and you deal with it and it's just fine. But like, I personally did not. Like, I mean, things are flexible. Don't stress out if something happens during dedicated and you get thrown off your schedule. Is kind of what I was trying to say. Things still like work out, but don't like. It's really up to you in terms of balance. I can't really speak much about balancing it because I didn't do it. Besides,
if it's more important for you to sit outside and get 20 minutes of sunlight during board studying, I highly recommend you do that. All right, then do 20 minutes of research because everyone else would be more appreciative. You would be more appreciative. Just do that instead.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
definitely when I was board studying, I didn't look for anything new. And I'm someone who will, my stuff has been like case reports or, like a project that starts and then ends and like start. And so something ended in like September and I was like not looking for anything new for a good while now and just like, took some time so that way I could get through that season of life. All right. Does anyone else out there have any questions? We'd love to answer them for you.
I had a quick question. First, thank you, everybody. Thanks for doing this. And then Tiffany, this was actually for you. I joined a couple of minutes late, but I believe you briefly mentioned something about something we should keep in mind when doing self-directed research. Maybe I completely misunderstood. So if I did, I'm sorry. But could you speak more on that?
Do you mean like as far as timing self-directed research?
I thought you had mentioned something about like, I don't know if it's an organization or a website or like an opportunity of some sort.
Joining different like professional organizations. So like I'm a member of like AAPMR, AAP, and AOCPMR, and like look for mentors and then like know people through those different organizations. So that way I can feel more comfortable reaching out to people, whether it be through social media or email, or could find mentors in those organizations and then can reach out and be like, hey, would like love to be, your typer. If you had something cool that you needed typed up, I'd love so much to help with that. Because I'm not as great and confident at like cold emailing folks. So that's what has worked for me.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. If anyone has any questions or anyone has anything else to add, please feel free. If not, you are welcome to log off. But we're just so glad we could host y'all for the evening.
If you want our emails, we can drop them. But also, if you don't want them, you don't need them.
Yeah.
You can also follow us on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, should
Shameless plugs.
Yeah, right. And Instagram. No, but definitely, guys, I'm dead serious. Get on Twitter. It's a great place to just keep up to date. I know, I'm assuming most of you guys are already, but definitely keep up there. I'll put mine in there.
I need to start using Twitter. Everyone says it's so great, especially for PM&R. Apparently Twitter is like where it's at. And I have the app on my phone. I just don't ever open it. I can't do it.
It's good for like people knowing your face. I've had people think they've met me before, and I was like, I don't think we have, but like I'll pretend.
Wow.
I'm honestly certain. I actually think I got an interview at a great school because I like all the program directors like tweets. I swear to God, I'm not kidding.
You know, that's
Consciously know my face because I use the same picture for like my app,
Okay,
Twitter, everything.
That's huge. Listen what Maggie just said there. Use the same exact picture for all of your like your social media stuff, because your face is like, especially virtually, that's what they want to see. It works so well.
Genius.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. So if you have the same face in your ARS application on your Twitter and you just go around tweeting and liking everything.
Yeah.
On your
Squeaky
Zoom,
wheel gets the
if you're
grease.
attending things, if you're attending lectures on Zoom, put the same picture again. So then they'll just really your face will be ingrained in their head. They'll be like,
Wow.
That's so smart.
That's amazing. And honestly, it's like you're putting the work in. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're cheating. This is genuine, like you're trying to be involved with the field. So
Like, no joke, Nicole, picture. Okay, so she just left, I think. But I know Nicole I've never met Nicole, but I know her from her picture. I've literally seen her and I'm really different things. Yeah.
she's one of my best friends. I'm gonna text her.
Oh, tell her that. I don't know her at all, but I know her directly through her picture. So
we're like so also cool. Like you feel free to log off because I'm catching up right now. But like if it's a helpful advice, obviously like listen, but don't feel like you need to stay for us talking about Twitter. But like it is very helpful.